Hi, my name is Nicole Faye Golden, and I'm the host of Scar Stories podcast. We all walk through seasons of brokenness, and it's so easy to buy into the lies that we're alone, forgotten, weak, and too far gone. But here's what I want you to know. We all have scars, and so we all have stories. I'm really hoping these interviews resonate with you and that you walk away knowing that you aren't alone, you're never forgotten, you are strong enough, and there are always second chances. Thanks so much for tuning in, and welcome to Scar Stories. Hi, guys. Welcome back to Scar Stories. My name is Nicole Golden, the host. And if y'all get a chance, if you wouldn't mind hopping onto SoundCloud or Apple Podcasts and just leaving a review of the podcast. Obviously, I love positive reviews, but if there's things that we can work on, we love that too. And then make sure you check out NicoleGolden.org. We are in the process of bringing in a lot more resources for you there, other people and sites to follow if you're looking for help for you or for someone else. So I am stoked about this Scar Stories podcast. So I want to give a little bit of background. This is my friend Emily Vasquez, and we actually met 2 or 3 years ago now. I can't remember. At a Relate conference in Bradenton, Florida. It was a conference for church leaders, and your husband spoke and gave his story. And it was right after my brother had committed suicide. And I remember just walking up to the front in tears, talking to both of you. And you gave me your number. We connected. Or maybe we connected on Instagram and then we got each other's numbers. But then I don't even know if you remember this, but then a few months later, my mother-in-law passed away right after my son was born. He was put in the NICU, and you were one of the first people to reach out to me to be like, hey, if you need anything. And it was just really neat how God kind of bonded our hearts. We've been friends from afar, but just you've been such an encouragement to me. And I love yours and your husband's story. It is messy miracle is what I would say. And those are my favorite stories.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Well, thank you. I want to say too, that it's funny because I remember the moment you came up to us.
yeah.
And, you have those moments where you just instantly connect with someone.
Yes.
And I think that's what we both kind of felt. And we need each other in this, in this whole thing called life. So it's been an honor.
Yeah. Well, and they pastor a church in Boston, Excel Church. And throughout this past year of trying to figure out how to pastor a church of people on all sorts of different sides, politically and racially, I've reached out to her a couple of times and been like, hey, do you kind of feel alone? Am I the only one that feels like my husband's being attacked for crazy things? And so that was been an encouragement too. So anyways, all right. Well, I don't want to take up too much time. I have a few questions for Emily, but I mainly just want her to share her story with us because it is powerful. And I've never heard her side of things. I've mainly heard Emmy's, but I've never heard your side of things from start to finish. So why don't I'm just going to give you the broad, tell us about your story, your trauma, your marriage, the whole 9 yards. Give it to us. And I'll just, as you say stuff, I may interrupt, or you may just talk the whole 40 minutes. I don't know. We'll see.
Okay. Well, first, thank you for having me on. It's been very exciting to see what's unfolded with you, and where me and my husband we watch you and Brian from afar, and we're just super proud to see what's happening. But I'm honored to be on this podcast. Mental health is definitely a passion for me, and having an open dialogue in general. I think the topic has become more common to discuss, and also in the church, it's become more common, but I'm grateful for just vulnerable platforms. So, I'm not sure where to really start in it, but I've always, I'm the youngest child. I have 2 older brothers.
Okay.
And probably around the 7th grade is when looking back, I can start to see that I was really having depression issues. But back then, I mean, I'm 43 now, so it wasn't discussed. It wasn't, I had a hard time focusing, and it just was. It was a battle because no one else in my family had it. No one else struggled like that. So I would constantly felt like an outcast, like what's wrong with me?
Yeah.
And just carried shame through my whole, middle school, high school, and beyond. And then fast forward to kind of like when I met my husband, the things that happened was I got pregnant. I was 19. This is before we were Christians.
Yeah. And how long have you been dating him before you got pregnant? Was it like a quick thing?
It was like 2 years.
Okay.
We were friends first. I was good friends with his sister. That's how I met him.
Okay.
So I was 19 when I got pregnant. And then the day that I had my ultrasound for our oldest daughter, my husband was arrested. And so we went through this whole thing where, I'm already struggling with mental health. I've had this kind of like stigma of like, what is wrong with me? Why can't I enjoy things like other people? Why am I always just tired and, sad and anxious? And so then, my boyfriend at the time goes to prison, and my two brothers were correctional officers. So that was, a lot of fun, great family conversations. But it just made me feel even more like a black sheep. And and I have a good family, but throughout that time, it just plunged me deeper into depression and just anxiety. I just isolated. And over the course of his prison sentence, he ended up getting saved. He started ministering to me in the church, like when I would go visit him.
Yeah.
And at first I didn't want anything to do with it. It was just, I was angry. Like, who are you to tell? I'm the one who's free. How are you going to tell me to live my life? Like, obviously, what's wrong with this picture? And I even remember one time him coming out and, trying to like encourage me and like bring out scriptures. And I just took the Bible, I threw it across the room and said some, profane words and left. But then like over the course of time, he was in for a few years. And the last year that he was in, he ended up leading me to the Lord.
Wow.
In the visiting room at the prison.
Wow.
And then that, he came home, we got married, but never really dealt with each of our individual traumas, thought, okay, we're Christians. We're going to get married and it's going to fix everything.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
And, and it didn't, obviously, I just struggled. And I think for me, one of my biggest, like looking back, was codependency had developed. It became like, I was so wanting to prove to people that I made the right decisions, specifically my family, like, that I unconsciously was like, I'm going to help him in everything that he needs to do. We're going to make this. And I kind of pushed myself down and just began to enable.
Yeah.
He comes from a lot of trauma.
Yeah.
He grew up, in an extremely abusive situation, a lot of abandonment issues and things like that. So it was my mission. I'm going to fix him. That's going to fix me. Everybody's going to think I'm a wonderful wife. And what that did was basically just cross over into enabling, but I thought it was love,
Yeah.
And then, so we're going through life. We have 2 more children. And things weren't terrible. It just was, I was living in this bubble of being fake. Like I became very good at putting out what I wanted people to know. And hiding, And so over the course of time, we ended up starting this church. And that's really when everything kind of came to a head.
Yeah.
And the church grew very quickly. We were shocked. We're like, in the Northeast, people don't come to church in the Northeast. What is going on?
Yeah.
And it just highlighted, when you're in a public situation, it highlights everything.
Yeah.
Everything becomes, it's like, I think of the analogy when people say, you give someone money, it's just going to highlight what's already there. If they're responsible, then they're going to use it responsibly. If there's issues there, then it's dangerous,
Yeah.
So it started to become like so much pressure because we had attention on us now. And I could see my husband wasn't doing well. He was struggling with depression. And fast forward, he ended up about 2 years into it. I was not doing well anymore. I could not keep it together. I was just not in a good situation, didn't know how to stop
Mm.
caring for him
Yeah.
and enabling him, because
And then,
now he had all this attention.
yeah. And like, how do you stop caring for him to care for yourself so that you can care for him health? It's like that
Yeah.
whole cycle. Yeah.
Yeah. So we had red flag after red flag. That's one thing that I've learned is like we have opportunities to address things,
Yeah.
and then if we don't, it all comes out anyway,
Yeah. Yeah.
So, kind of fast forward is he started sleeping like 3-4 days in a row, like wouldn't get
Wow.
out of bed.
Wow.
Um, and so it got to a point where he was just super depressed and I was depressed. I couldn't keep it together anymore. And one day I woke up and um, we have accountability software on our computer.
Yeah.
And I got a message that said that he was Googling pastors that commit suicide. And I knew in that moment, it was like, enough.
Mm.
Like, I don't care what people think. I don't care if people are going to be disappointed.
Mm.
I tell the story usually in reference to him,
Mm-hmm.
but really it was myself too. Like I knew in that moment, both of us were about to completely break. Our
Yeah.
family was about to break. So the email that I got that showed the alert, it was about him, but I knew in my heart that that was also about me. Like I
Yeah.
needed help. I needed to address what was going on. This was no longer manageable.
Yeah.
So I reached out to our pastors and we staged this intervention. He went away for treatment for 6 weeks.
Mm.
It was Thanksgiving and Christmas. He came home 2 days before Christmas. And in that time, like I just knew I have to address what's going on with me.
Mm.
And that led me on this journey of just taking responsibility for myself, really starting to understand, stop just putting blanket statements of like, oh, I'm so depressed. Oh, I'm so anxious. It was like, why?
Yeah. Yeah.
What's behind it?
Yeah.
And I think that that's one of the things that I'm the most passionate about is the conversation needs to go from what's behind the mental health struggle.
Yeah.
I mean, there can definitely be, and there's cases of, hormonal imbalance, but a lot of time it's like trauma responses,
Yep.
abandonment. Most of like, people that have addictions, they're mental health concerns,
Yes.
you're numbing your emotions. So
Yes.
the key is to like, I believe what I'm passionate about is moving the conversation from, okay, we understand you're depressed, understand there's anxiety, but what's behind it?
Yeah. 100%.
And I had come to a position where I had so suppressed certain traumas in my life, I forgot about them. It was like, it wasn't until I really started having I started going to therapy, I started, doing everything that I could, and all these memories started to come up. And it's just amazing what your brain will do to protect your body.
Yes.
And I think that one of the biggest learning lessons that I learned throughout this was pain is actually our friend. And I think a lot of times when we feel pain or we feel an emotion that's painful, we've so conditioned ourselves, oh, does not feel good, this is wrong, I'm going to run from it.
Yep.
And if we really do go there and allow yourself to cry, feel uncomfortable, and not run from the pain, like that's where the true healing starts to come.
Yes.
But we get constantly, and I know I have, and I've seen other people get in this cycle of, you start to go there, you start to feel it, you feel pain, and then you just go back. You're never making that full circle of what caused the pain, how can we heal it, how do we work through it.
Yes. And I think that's why so many people end up feeling numb, because they don't want to feel the pain. And I don't think what they realize is like, you're not just numbing the pain, you're numbing the ability to feel joy. When you go numb, you're going numb to every emotion, not just to the pain.
Exactly.
And what would you say to someone? Because I get this question all the time. So I know how I answer it. I'm going to guess we're probably going to answer it the same, but let's just see. But who are like, I'm afraid to go back and live through the trauma. I'm afraid to go back. That's one of the number one things when I'm like, hey, you need to get into counseling. And they're like, I'm scared to death because I'm going to have to relive everything. I'm going to have to re-experience everything. And yes, we've kind of addressed it by saying you've got to embrace the pain, but you had to relive stuff that you didn't even remember.
Yeah.
So what would you say to someone that's like, what is that like? Will I feel overwhelmed? I think the fear is like they're just going to disintegrate in there. Like the pain's just going to become so overwhelming, they're going to disintegrate. So what would you say to that person?
Yeah, I would say it's real.
Yeah.
I think that was one of the reasons why for so long I found, numbing and like being the person that was always taking care of people and making everything look, perfect, and, you know, numbing how I felt and taking care of myself was because I was afraid. You're going to go back, you're going to relive these painful moments, and you think it's going to bring you back, like it's going to set you back.
Yeah.
And it's uncomfortable. I would say anybody who is feeling like that, it's a justified feeling. I understand why you are afraid.
Yeah.
I understand how you are, overwhelmed.
Yeah.
I understand that you're afraid that it's going to set you back. But the thing that I've taken away is that if you don't process your pain processes you.
Yes.
Either way, it's coming up.
Yep.
Either way, you can either deal with it now and start to slowly go through it at your pace. It doesn't have to be, if you seek counseling, you get to control, how fast you go through this thing.
Yeah.
But as long as you start. But if you don't process it, it doesn't go away.
Yeah.
It comes up in other ways. It comes up in anger. It comes up in depression. It comes up with mental health issues. It comes up with addictions.
Yeah.
It will come up.
It's coming for you. Yeah.
Yes. So that would be my biggest takeaway, would say, start somewhere.
Yeah.
Yes. I understand it is scary and it is overwhelming and it is painful. I'm not going to lie, but you either start somewhere or you deal with families falling apart and not being able to have healthy relationships, and, plummeting in drug addiction and alcoholism and suicide.
Yeah.
The pain, it doesn't get easier by ignoring it. It gets worse.
Yeah.
That's what I wish people could see.
And I think like one of the things I was thinking about as you were talking about it is like, it doesn't set you back. It sets you free.
Absolutely.
Because you're going to just live in this jail cell of your pain and your numbing and your, self-medicating and self-coping instead of allowing yourself, go back and experience it so you can be set free from it, and you can learn how to control your pain and it doesn't have to control you. So that's powerful stuff, Emily. Okay. So you started to go through your own. Now, what's happening with the kids during this time? I mean, Emmy's away at this, going through treatment. You're having a little bit of a breakdown. What's happening with the kids?
Yeah, I literally stayed home with my children. I didn't leave my house for 6 weeks.
Okay.
I was just like, this is all I'm going to do. I'm just going to take care of my kids.
Yep.
I didn't see anybody I didn't see family. Except for my own parents. I didn't see anybody else. It was just, I was so aware and conscious because of my own trauma as a child and not being able to express emotions and express how traumatic experiences. And then also seeing how much it affected my husband, that the blessing was that I was so aware that I did not do it perfect, but I knew that I needed to at least push through to be there for them. So it was like the way that I was there for them was I never left. I brought them to and from school. I was home cooking meals every night, trying to show them that I was there for them and caring for them. Definitely didn't get it 100% right, but they were our youngest. She didn't really understand what was going on, which I'm grateful for.
Yeah.
But my older two, they did.
Yeah.
And we're working through some of that now.
Okay.
Especially with our oldest, where there's anger in the church against the church.
Wow.
And it's, in her lens, it's justified. She's equating my parents, went through this rough time, and it was during a time in the church. And they've seen some past church hurt. So, we're trying to help them through that.
Yeah.
My son handled it really well. My oldest, but she was the one that she was 19 at the time. So she was helping me, she was more conscious. She was more concerned. But we take it a step at a time.
Yeah. Do you
Yeah.
mind? I mean, this is more her story. So if you don't want to share this is fine. And just say, and we'll move on. But was her anger at the church? Because this is something I feel like we need to discuss more, because the church as a whole needs to hear, like, hey, the way you guys have handled this, and this is the reason why I wanted to even get a lot of these conversations started and why I'm so passionate about it. We have handled it so poorly. I mean, my brother was a pastor when he committed suicide. Like,
Oh my goodness.
and
I did not know that.
yeah. And so this is a big deal. We have to figure out how we can address this better so that this stuff doesn't keep happening. But did she feel like they needed to step in more? Did she feel like it was the reason why things had been ignored? Again, if you don't want to answer that for her, that's fine.
Yeah. I mean, I can't answer it for her, but I can to the best of my ability. I just think that she equated all the pressure that she saw us under.
Okay. Yeah.
With that's what broke us, and again, it was a portion of it, but we came in unhealthy.
Yeah.
So that's what kind of, like, when I was saying, like, you're either going to deal with it, it's going to come up eventually. That was the situation that brought it up.
But I think
tied to that.
To her point though, and I feel like it's a catch-22, because yes, we need spiritual leaders who are healthy, 100%. But then we've also got to realize, like, our spiritual leaders are human, and we're broken just as much as the next person. And so we've got to have the space and the freedom to feel like we can struggle. And I think that's why so many pastors right now are committing suicide, or are, we've seen it. I mean, you and I, for as long as we've been in the ministry, have seen it. The people that we love and respect end up having affairs, leaving the church, doing some, I mean, in the past, this is sad, but this is how honest I want us to be in this interview. I was organizing, my husband and I share this at home office. I was organizing all of our books, and you wouldn't believe how many books I had to set aside. Like, well, this person, did this, or this person. And I'm not saying their ministry is over, but I'm just like, this is crazy that this has happened in the past few years. So it's figuring out, like, yes, your spiritual leaders need to be healthy, but then they also have to have the space to be able to get healthy, because they're as broken as the next person,
And that's something that, to me, I'm grateful that we had that. So our pastors staged the intervention. They recognized that what they were dealing with was beyond what they could help. In the physical mental health arena. And that's, like, when you talk about pastors that commit suicide or whatever, every single time. We did a panel at ARC this year with Pastor Greg Surratt, and we talked about mental health, because he had a best friend last year that passed away from suicide. And we were just talking honestly, and I stated then, like, every time, and I hate the fact that I even have to say every time, but it's like, when I hear of a pastor that commits suicide, I just grieve, because I know that could have very easily been us. And what the difference was is we were so blessed to have pastors that acknowledge that mental health is a real issue, and you need help beyond what I can help you with. One of the earliest, when I first got saved, it was the first time I tried to really reach out I was just experiencing depression and anxiety. And so the church that I was in, and this is, I don't know, 25 years ago, I had made an appointment with one of the pastors and sat down and expressed how I was feeling.
We just had a little bit of a freezing situation.
All of these different things, like, and I walked away going, okay, it just solidified to me that there was something wrong with me.
And we froze for just a second. So just go back. So you said 20. My internet is being wackadoodle-doo. So like 20, you said 25, and I'm in the room with the server. So I'm like,
it's all
get
good.
Behind me, Satan. So you said 25 years ago, you were struggling. You reached out to go meet with someone. And then what happened when you got there?
So it was in my first real, like, church.
Okay.
And I reached out to one of the pastors, like, I need help, like, I've struggled with this my whole life. And I walked away from that meeting feeling worse than when I walked in, because here I am for the first time and I'm expressing, I'm depressed, I'm anxious. And I know that to the best of their ability, they were giving me what they thought was right. They weren't
Yeah.
trying to be mean looking back, but
Yeah.
it was just, you got to change the way you think. And,
Mm.
walked away with this feeling wrong with me as a Christian. I'm not releasing my faith the way I should, because I should have the joy of the Lord. I should have all these things, and don't really say it. I remember one time, saying I'm depressed, and it was like the comment back to me was, well, that's why you're depressed, because you keep saying you're depressed. And I walked away like, okay, this person is in leadership and they must know something that I don't know.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I think has been an immense tragedy in the church is how the church has dealt with mental health.
Amen.
I don't know where we got it wrong. I don't know why we will look at every other organ in the body and pray and believe for healing, and take medication and see doctors and still believe that God can heal you, but the brain is off. That's off the table. It's just how you're thinking. It drives me crazy. I think that the church has had a lot of casualties that they're not even aware of.
Yeah.
And by that, I mean suicide and addictions, but also people that have turned away from the church. If you can't go to your church and say, this is how I'm feeling, and get compassion and get there's nothing wrong with you, people walk away because they feel shamed.
Yes.
And one of the things that really changed it for me was when I really read through Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. How in the world can we as Christians say that you're seeing Jesus walk out his mental health, his humanness, his emotions?
Yeah.
He's going through everything, anger, loneliness. He's sharing it out loud. He's, becoming, short with people. He's begging God, take this from me. Like
he's having a physical response with the blood, everything. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, he is having full-fledged breakdown.
Yeah.
And he talked about it.
Yeah.
He addressed it.
Yeah.
He's even talking with God freely. I know a lot of times, like back in the day, I'd feel guilty, even like God didn't already know.
Yeah.
But he's sitting there saying, if you can take this from me, why have you left me? He's being so human.
Yeah.
And that's when it really changed for me.
Yeah.
And I was like, how do we skip over this?
Yeah.
At the end of it, the key is that Jesus still got up and went.
Yeah.
So he didn't stop. He didn't sit.
Yeah.
He didn't wait till everything was together, but he was addressing and showing his human form in every situation.
Yeah.
And
that's so
I
powerful.
don't know how.
We missed
to me, it's just the most powerful form of mental health, and how we need to express it. We need to have people around us that we trust. We can't share it with everybody.
Yeah.
But there has to be people that you draw close and that you can share with how you're feeling. And I think, I'm sorry if I'm getting too preachy, but
no, please. I'm having emotional responses to what you're saying. So you just keep going. I think I will say just real quick, I'd never heard, I love what you just shared about Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. One of the things that I always talk about was right after I got my diagnoses of anxiety, depression, and borderline, we were in Texas for my brother's wedding, and we went to Matt Chandler's church there, and he was sharing from 2 Corinthians 12 about Paul's thorn in the flesh, and he explained it, and I had never heard it explained this way. I'd always heard it of the scales in his eyes, or a speech impediment, but he shared that he felt like it was an emotional or mental illness for him. And as I searched the scriptures, I started thinking yes, you look in Philippians, is it 2:14 or 3:14, where he says one thing I do, forgetting what lies behind.
Yeah.
And that's present tense, forgetting, because you've got to think the people that he had imprisoned and killed, as he starts these churches, he's running into their families. He's running into their full grown children who have grown up orphans. He's seeing all of these. And then his progression in scripture where he's I'm the least of the apostles, I'm the least of the saints, I'm the chief of sinners. I think he really did struggle with anxiety and depression. And he begged, just like Jesus, take this from me, take this from me. And God said, no, my strength is made perfect in your weakness. And you're right. I love that. Jesus got up and went, and Paul was okay, I'm going to get up and keep serving. But those honest conversations, having those with the Lord, I begged God for so long, take all this stuff from me. And I remember in that moment, God was I'm not going to take it from you, this side of heaven, because your voice is going to be more powerful if you're talking out of your weakness, where then I can come behind you and clothe you in my strength.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's hard to listen to people that are like, oh, God completely healed me. I mean, I love their stories. That's
Yeah.
great. But
Yeah.
God completely healed me. I'm not struggling with it anymore. And I'm like, that doesn't relate to me because I'm still in the midst of my struggle,
Right.
like I'm
Yeah.
healthy, but
Yeah.
I'm still in the midst of it,
Yeah.
So anyways, okay. Keep being preachy. Keep talking.
No, I think everything you just said is true. And the thing that I love about it is, even in the story that you just shared, I think faith isn't denial. And I think that we took that on for so
Yep.
long. The church did. It was like, okay, I'm just going to deny it's not there. I'm not going to talk about it. Everything that you just said that he said, he's acknowledging everything.
Yeah.
When he's saying forgetting what's behind me, I think really it's more like, I can't change it.
Exactly.
I can't change what, because you're not going to forget the pain.
No, you're not.
There's
No.
there, and that's what I think, like we hear like, oh, forgive and forget. It's
Mhm.
like you forgive, and for certain situations you will never forget it,
No, you won't. Yeah.
and you'll still experience the pain of it. But I think the key in general for people in general, Christian, non-Christian, is to listen better. I
Mm.
think, especially, I'm sorry, I keep mentioning church because it's our world, but
But this needs to be addressed in the church, so keep mentioning it,
yeah, I think Christians are some of the worst listeners. I don't, and I'm throwing myself out there
Oh, preach it. Yeah.
before, like it was, I don't know what it is. Like I've thought about it. It's like, I'm not sure if we feel like because we're Christians, like if we don't have all the answers, we're going to somehow like misrepresent God, or,
Yeah.
I'm not sure what it is, but it's like, there's just a power in just listening. And,
Yep.
what can I do for you? Being
Yeah.
honest as a leader,
Yeah.
when you don't have the expertise to uh, counsel somebody who's been through real trauma,
Yeah.
referring them to a professional.
Get out of the game. Yes. Like,
Yeah, there's
yeah.
so many ministry cliques that it's like, you can just come here, you can come here. I think the spiritual side of it, there are times that, yes, you can just stay within your church and get help. And for some of the larger churches, they have licensed therapists or whatever, but I believe in professional help.
Yeah.
And I
100%.
think that there's such a stigma there's a fear of, oh, we're going to send them into the world. And
Yes.
the fear is real.
Yeah.
But if you do your homework,
Yes.
where the church as a whole isn't equipped
Yes.
to deal with the physical, traumatic, psychological things that need to be processed. And a lot of times, even in my own situation, it wasn't intentional, but I was almost re-traumatized
Yes.
by coming forward and saying, this is how I feel. And then and I know, again, I can't stress how much none of it is intentional. This is
No.
this is the pattern that other ministry leaders have learned. This is how
Yeah.
you help people.
Yeah.
But we're not helping.
No.
It's like, listen, admit when you don't know how to fix something. How can I best help you?
Yeah.
And I really think that you need to seek professional help and then help them find someone.
Yeah.
We have to start being realistic with what we can help with and what we need to bring professionals in.
Yeah. And I think some of it too is just like Christians, the church as a whole, we're afraid of the messy gray, but that's when you read the gospels, like that's where Jesus parked. And that was the reason why the religious leaders had so much trouble with him, because they wanted stuff black or white. Because for us, that's easier to compartmentalize. That's easier for us to organize in our brain. But gray, it's like, what do you do with this? And what if we get it wrong? And, what if we end up pushing that person further away? And somehow we think we have to be the surrogate saviors in everyone's lives. And we don't have to be. Like, we represent Jesus. And that's the end of it. Let Jesus be Jesus. You represent him to someone, and then you let him do what he needs to do. But yeah, I think we're just so afraid of the messy gray. And I think sometimes too, like when I think of people in leadership, even my brother in his own situation, he hopped around from church to church because he numbed his pain with opioids.
Okay.
He had gotten the shingles and then found out opioids did wonders, and just kept refilling the prescription. And when that didn't work, his dogs got sick and he would use their prescriptions and things like that. there were churches that had found out about this stuff or some of it and would just quickly like send him to a psych ward for a day or hire him. And then like, okay, the moment you have trouble, tell me, well, then he's going to get fired. There was never the safe place to deal with it. And then I think like even in his own family at the time, the fear of if we come out and really say what a problem this is, what's going to happen? Like, is everyone going to look at us weird? Are we, they have twins, like what's going to happen to our health insurance? What's going to happen to all of this?
Yeah.
And so I don't know if churches, even like when leadership are struggling, if they're afraid of what is it going to look like on us that we let someone like that in here. And it's like, you're full of people like that. Like that's your church.
Yeah.
Some of the sin you see and some of it you have no idea about. And some of the people you think are perfect their marriages are falling apart and you have no idea. And it's just, we've got to get off of this. Things are black and white. No, grace is gross because it's dealing with all the gray and all the mess. And we just have to get comfortable there, but we don't like to be comfortable there.
I think that, like there's a phrase that drives me crazy in the church, and this is more like leadership staff or whatever, but it's like, hire slow and fire quick. That phrase drives me crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the same leaders will say, come to me with anything.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You're like, I can't come to you with anything. Yeah.
There has to be, you have to, and I understand there's accountability. There's another level of accountability when you're living in church, but you summed it up so perfectly when you said, I can't, okay, I'm struggling. I want to reach out, but I can't because I'm going to lose my job. I'm going to lose the health insurance. I'm going to lose all these things.
Yeah.
And what's really behind it is there has to be grace for ministry leaders to be able to say, okay, I know I'm coming to you and I know that I'm in the wrong, but I'm coming to you out of a pure heart because I want to make it right.
Exactly.
And give grace in there where it's not this, shut moment where it's like, you're done. We just got off the phone with somebody right now that it was right before we hopped on. The guy has been the most loyal member of a church, not our own church, but another one, and made a mistake that really isn't that big of a deal, like in the grand scheme of things, and they let him go overnight. So now he's dealing, and it's like, where's the grace?
Yeah.
And there are times that absolutely, there are certain things that should not be negotiable.
Yeah.
But most of them I think are, and it's like, there has to be a better way, a safe place where you have at least your core people or a group of people, different people that you can go and be real, and then the ones that you can kind of like, go as accountability, but still be able to be raw and vulnerable, that is not attached to your job, if you get hired or fired. And I know that could sound, a little, unconventional, but it's the only way, because if we constantly afraid to be removed as leaders, or what is the church going to think of me, we're never going to break out of this.
No. And we're going to keep having churches that are torn. It's what we said in the beginning, like you either deal with it now or you're going to deal with a bigger mess later. And so because these pastors and people in leadership can't get the help they need, then it becomes a thing where they commit suicide or their family has fallen apart at the seams and we all stand by. How did this happen? Well, it was happening. I talked to someone a while ago and she was like, a friend of hers had, a pastor had just wrecked his family. And she was like, I have to say, like, where were the elders? Like, and not to throw elders under the bus, but it's like, where were you? How did you not see this coming? How did you not surround this family? Like, what was going on? And I think what's so powerful about you guys' story is the elders didn't remove Emmy. He finished that story for us. So he goes and then he comes back. And I mean, they saved that spot for him, correct?
Oh, they did. It was one of the reasons why, and I will give a shameless plug to ARC, that I feel like they're getting better with like the relate in like there's a caring, like trying to create another network of like, you can come here and be real. That's why my husband was able to share our story at the time that we met. It was like, share the messy, like share it, because we all need it. And we were overwhelmed with people that were just like, I'm struggling with this. I've never been able to see anything, say anything. But I think it's the example of how we were restored, maybe could be somewhat of a model. And the first thing was that I had another friend that I could be real and raw with, that we both have passion with mental health and trauma recovery and things like that. So I had that line of communication with her constantly, where I was being open, but I wasn't being 100% open with my pastors. But it was that healthy work with her that was like, you need to bring this to your pastors. And thank God I did, because I don't know if I didn't have that other voice with her, I would have been a little bit too afraid of, what is this going to do to my husband's reputation, our reputation, everything that you just said about your brother, the church, our health insurance, and our pastors came in, staged an intervention. My pastor got on a plane and flew across the country just to bring Emmy to the treatment center.
Wow.
And then got him there safe and turned back around.
Wow.
That is love.
Yeah.
He didn't, it was like, okay, I'm going to bring him there, then came back. And then what we did, my husband was he was not working for 6 months. So, they just helped fill speakers, and we would, update the church periodically. We didn't give specific details then.
Yeah. There we go. Freezing again. We'll be back.
It was a mental health issue.
Yeah.
And, it's a miracle, because then he was brought, back and then put in better place, like okay, rest. That's the other thing I was going to say too. Everybody's like, oh, I just need a vacation, or we're going to put them on a sabbatical. That's great, but it doesn't address trauma. You can take a break for a week, but you're still dealing with it. So, and that's where I think that they were different. They helped us do that, and then put different protocols in place where it was like, had a very open window. At that point, we knew we could tell them anything. We could be brutally honest. And it's a miracle, because there's churches that fall apart for less than what happened with this church.
Yeah.
And I honestly think that they stepped up. They were true overseers, where they came in. It wasn't just a title. They helped pastor. They helped, lead the staff. I'll be forever grateful for it. And I think it's a model that I hope more churches take on, is like, titles. It's about relationship. Like, will you be there when I call you and say, I'm breaking down, or, whatever it is, will you be there to help me keep this thing afloat so I can get healthy and get real, and it's more accountability and support like that than just superficial.
Well, it's caring more about the man than the ministry. It's realizing, like, if we take care of this family, God's going to take care of the ministry ultimately, because, your whole church was watching at that point. What are they going to do? What are they going to do with the person who's highest up? And if they just throw that person out, well, then, like, how do I know they're not going to do that to me? You know what I'm saying? And so they're watching that. And I think, like, that's why y'all's story is like one of my most favorite stories, because just to see that was the church on mission. That was the church in action. That was the church being what God has called us to be, is surrounding the person, the lead pastor, the person, the highest, rank on the org chart, and saying, we're going to care for you. It's going to maybe put us back growth wise or financially or whatever, because I'm sure there were some hits, but we don't care about that. We care about, Emmy and Emily. And then what that's done though for y'all's story, like the power, like anytime I get to hear Emmy speak and then get to hear you share the story, just the power of it. And I think, like, all the pride and all of that has been smashed away. You guys are just some of the most vulnerable, authentic people, and just your passion for people, your passion for the Lord, all of that just shines through you guys, and you're so connectable. But I think it's because of what you had to walk through, and I think about our first year of marriage, like, it was bad. I was suicidal. I was just out of nowhere falling apart at the seams. And my husband, wrote up a letter of resignation, and the head elder at the time was his father. And then there were a few other on the elder team. And so he gave it to them, and they ended up tearing up the letter of resignation. They had every right to accept that. I mean, he'd just been named lead pastor a couple months before. So it would have been a real easy, like, hey, we did this too quickly. You know, they could have easily pulled back, and my father-in-law could have taken back over, and they didn't. They ripped up the letter of resignation, got us help. And I think we froze again. Are we there? Are you there? It's just freezing on us. There we are. But
I'm like, it's freezing.
yeah, it's freezing. They
ripped up the letter of resignation.
Yes, and got us help. We went away to some intensives. I got into counseling. I've been with my same counselor for 10 years now. And we speak so openly about it. Like the elders know, like, you know, and for me, it's mainly an issue for me, but I've gotten to the place where I'm healthy. But even like during, you know, that year when my brother committed suicide and then Bryant's mom passed away, we took about a month and a half off, where like at one point it was like, you know, Bryant didn't have a start back day. And it was like, you know, just whenever you're ready to come back, you know? And so people stepped up and filled it, because we needed that time. We needed to hunker down and just be a family. We needed that time to be able to talk to our counselor. We had been through so much trauma in 2019. We needed time to process, and they gave us that freedom. And there was never the pressure of like, Bryant, whenever you're ready, whenever you're ready. And the church was booming at that time, you know? So our elders were so faithful and gracious in that area. But yeah, I feel like, you know, this, we talked in the beginning, you're like, how honest can I be? And I'm like, we've got to be honest, because other churches need to hear this. They need to realize like we have put spiritual leaders in really dangerous positions because we're not letting them have the opportunity to be open and vulnerable. And then we're shocked and dismayed when marriages fall apart or people commit suicide or they come out with addictions. We're like, how did that happen? We did it. We did it, you know? So,
and I think like, just to circle back, it seems like we had, you know, maybe not the exact same situation, but the healthy leaders that were like, okay, listen, we know your broken places. It doesn't disqualify you. Let us help you heal you.
Yes.
Let us, you know, you can go through your process. But one of the things you said too is like the church was booming.
Yeah.
I think there's a fear of like, what are people going to think of me? I think it actually connects with your congregation more.
Yeah.
Because they're all struggling with mental health. You mentioned opioids, like what it is so engrossed in the church, you know, that people don't even know. You know, we hear it because we hear personal stories, but it's the story of so many people, and it's pain management, it's emotional pain management. So when we're vulnerable and we're open and not sharing all the gory details, but I think people in our congregation actually connect with that more and can see the realness. Like I can come here and not be perfect, where it actually ends up helping the ministry than acting like you're completely perfect, you know?
Yeah. 100%. Gosh, okay. This has been so powerful. And we've basically gone an hour, so we probably need to wrap up like, or have like a part 2 at some point, but I'm just looking through. Is there anything else that you like want to share or leave with people who are walking through trauma, overcoming trauma? Like, you know,
I think I would say, that especially if you're coming out of like, sometimes family systems are built to kind of keep secrets, you know? So I would say that if you are wanting to begin the journey of processing trauma or getting help for mental health.
Hold on 1 second. Emily, I have a friend. Go ask Daddy.
I love that.
Okay, get another one to go watch a show. Okay. I have to like tablets or Showtime or Daddy's working from home. Go find Daddy, please. Okay, sorry. Okay, keep going.
I would just say you have to be very selective with who you share what you're going through. Like your family may not be able to handle it, because a lot of our trauma and pain is tied to the family. You become protective. Our family and our close friends, sometimes like the whole system is, we don't talk about this. And if you begin to talk about it, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to cause problems? So it may feel lonely at first, but you don't need approval from everybody. People will not understand. Find the people that do understand, that you can talk to. It may very well be out of your current circle that you're going to need to get that support. But I would say start somewhere. You know, do it afraid. Start the conversation, try counseling. One of the things that I always tell people is that, you know, it took me 2 or 3 times to find the counselor that I really meshed well with. The first couple, there wasn't a connection. And I had somebody that gave me the advice of like, you keep going until you find the right person. I'm so grateful for that, because I think it was like, oh, see, counseling doesn't work for me.
Yes.
So there's different styles and there's different personalities, just like with anything. So if one doesn't work, try another one and try another one. You'll find that person. But just start somewhere, and be selective of who you share it with.
Yeah.
Get the people that get it, that can support you. And I think that would be.
Yeah, that's so powerful, because you're right. So many people are like, I tried counseling once and it didn't work, or I went for and it's like, you just didn't find the right one. And you don't need to be afraid to be like, hey, I'm going to try someone else. Like, counselors are aware of that. They know that they're not going to connect with everybody. And so finding that person that you can really connect with and feel safe with is huge. And yeah, getting the right people in your corner. I have 2 or 3 people that I text whenever I'm struggling really badly. And but they're people that have been tracking with me for years and that know me and that won't freak out. Because that's the other thing, is like finding people that aren't going to like freak out. You need the people that are going to stay level headed, like, okay, you're struggling. Like, is this something where we need to get an extra help, or is it just like a normal struggle, So that's awesome. Well, you guys make sure that you follow Emily on social media and follow Emmy, her husband, and Excel Church. They do some really awesome things, and I know you'll be blessed by them. And she brought up ARC a few times. So those of you like, what is ARC? It's just basically like a network of churches and stuff. But anyways, Emily, I really appreciate it. This has been awesome. I feel like all right, let's go change the world. I feel so energized now.
Thank you. I'm grateful for what you're doing. This is what needs to happen more, having vulnerable conversations. So I'm honored to be on here having this conversation with you. And it's awesome to see what God's doing through you. So
thank you. Awesome. All right, you guys. Well, check her out on social media. Check out NicoleGolden.org and make sure you tune in next time for Scar Stories. Thanks again for tuning in. Thank you so much for tuning in to Scar Stories podcast. We all need places where we can feel seen, be safe, find connection and resources. I would love to connect with you on social media at Nicole Faye Golden. I also have a website with a ton of resources and a free 7-day Praying Scared prayer journal at NicoleGolden.org. Thank you for tuning in. I'd love it if you shared this with your friends and if you left a rating and a comment. And I look forward to seeing you next time as we delve into mental health, parenting, family, and so many other issues with a lot of my friends. We'll see you soon.